So let's get started. I want to take a look at this piece. The person who submitted it to my subreddit. And to get your work critiqued on my videos, to see your work on my videos, go to istebrak.com and click on the subreddit icon right here. That'll take you to my subreddit. And right at the top, you'll see a community challenge pinned. This is a very important challenge. It's due November 30th. It's a design challenge, so just draw what's written in the challenge and you might win a whole bunch of stuff. Pretty much everything I can give, which is everything in my store for free, along with 2 portfolio review sessions with me, private tutoring with me. And yeah, it's going to be really, really cool just seeing what everybody posts, everyone's interpretation. If you learned something today and you want to give back, please support me on Patreon. You don't have to support for a whole lot. It's just $1 a month as a watcher tier. And that would just it goes a long way if everybody joins. And it really takes everyone to join. It's not just, that's why I kept the pledge amount so low. But if you guys learned something, if you guys want to give back, if you feel like this is a great resource for artists and students, please support my channel by going to Patreon and just joining as $1. If you want to join for higher tiers, there's more educational material for the higher tiers. So this artist who posted this said that they want help with the lighting. And you can see, just throw out some words at this. What do you feel when you look at it? What are some of the downsides of this drawing? For me personally, it feels muddy. There's not a lot of contrast. It's a dark scene. It's not a very appealing character. The middle of the canvas is empty, so his expression isn't towards us. He's not even looking at us. So you guys can just throw some words, people who are attending the stream, what pops out at you guys, and you'll notice that the stuff everybody reports, and I'm sure they're going to say the same thing, it's too dark, it's a little bit difficult to know what's how, it's kind of boring, it's too symmetrical. So all of these things relate to the same essential problem, which is the storytelling with the light. So the light helps you tell stories. So if you're not aware of that, you end up using the light as like this secondary thing, not as a primary thing, especially in a dark scene where the character has no interaction with the viewer and it's kind of symmetrical and boring as a composition. The light really has to take the baton, take the torch. The light has to take all the responsibility of telling the story. So one thing I usually like to do is just mess around with contrast and see if just the levels alone will fix it. Gosh, I'm having such a hard time lassoing. And that's why I'm having a hard time lassoing, because all your values are so similar. You might as well have just taken a picture of something in the dark. And that's a lot of you guys, when you try to paint dark scenes, you forget. Dark scenes in art are actually daylight scenes. Write that back to me. That means that they are just the same as any other daylight value illustration. Yes, you're just painting daylight. The reason why it looks like nighttime is because you use a blue filter on all the colors. You can't actually paint a painting of something at night without breaking the rules. And look at any classical art or anything like that, they all have the same essential rule breaking, which is all the values are a lot brighter, as bright as they would be to us if the moon was out or if it was pre-sunset without the sharp long shadows. You know, like there's this ambient value exposure to everything. So I'm just connecting the background, and we're going to address many things. We're going to address the background as the source of all of the contrast we need. So let's give that a shot. And then we're going to add in some contrast on his head. We're going to add in some reflected light on his book and some bounce light from the book on his head after darkening his head some more. So the story is going to start being a communication between the face and the book instead of the top of the canvas with his head. Do you know what I'm saying? Pretty much his head and his little jewel here are the only things we're looking at. We aren't interested in any of the rest of the illustration. But look at how much more space we have to worry about. You might as well have just cropped it. right here. Use classic mode. You might as well have just cropped it right there, but we can't do that. So let's reconnect the face with the book, and let's reorganize the focal point. So the first thing to do is to bring in some contrast with the background. So those levels right off the bat, all of a sudden, it's really interesting. The background isn't important, so why should it have been that bright? And it just fixes it right away, because just a little bit of contrast helps us get a step away from that gray fog you had over everything. The next thing I'm going to do, which is what I already mentioned, which is levels. I'm going to just let the levels kind of scream a little bit, but I'm not going to keep them like this. I'm going to copy this layer and go to before I check the levels. I'm going to paste the same layer on top of itself. So now I have both. And I'm just going to delete with soft brush, with whatever brush I need, in order to create that necessary contrast. Okay. And then again, slowly just deleting away at whatever I feel like doesn't need all that much brightness. All right, so now we have way more volume. We have values moving closer to the canvas. It's so funny. There's a fly on my monitor and it's following my mouse. He's chasing my mouse. It's so funny. It's like a tiny little fruit fly. And then I'm going to merge that down with that base layer. So now I have all this contrast. And then I'm going to really quickly try to lasso out the top pages of the book. Wow, that lasso wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. And the book is catching a lot of the light. It's a whole ass reflector pointing at the light source. It's a reflector in and of itself in its own right, because that's essentially in photography how they diffuse shadows caused by intense lighting. They just use a reflector, which diffuses the amount or the sharpness of the shadows. So I am just trying to lasso out the rest of this paper. And I'm going to get dodge tool, but not on highlights, dodge tool on midtones. I'm going to close that up. And I'm going to let that I'm going to let that book catch some light. And then now I'm going to switch it to highlights. And then I'm just going to show how the book maybe is made of a more silken material. Okay, and it's catching a lot of light. And this book seems like it's very important to him, so I'm sure that it has a lot of spiritual meaning, narrative weight to it. So I'm going to let this book glow a little bit as well to show that it is a reflector, but also to give it a sense of importance. And all that light emerging from the book is going to reflect back up at our guy and diffuse some of the shadows on his face. So now we have an opportunity to bring in all of this extra bounce light on his nose, on his lower jaw or upper jaw area, lower lip, on the tip of his chin. Most importantly, the nose, really, because that's what catches the light. You should get rid of those lines. You don't need them. A little bit on the inner eyebrows. So now there's a connection. Now the light is connecting the book and the guy together. And now it makes sense because he's reading the book. It's not some mystical stuff that's hard to figure out. He's reading the damn book. So make him have more of a cooperation with the book when it comes to light telling the story. So I'm decreasing his visibility in the scene. I'm letting only the bounce light I added take over. Do you see what that's doing? All of a sudden, so much makes sense. So I'm going to actually only delete at his face a little bit at a time because I want the book to stay bright. And then Now we have just a more ominous story, a little bit more of it. Not so ominous. I'm not trying to make it look like a bad guy. If he was a good guy, it still feels right. It's just more about the relationship between the character and the book. If you don't want to delete his face, if you want to keep him feeling a little bit less scary, if you want to make him look a little bit more kind, you can kind of overwhelm this scene with a bit more light around his face. So a friendlier character, a kind character, almost like a Buddha-like character, can have more light on his face just like that. That will make him look more kind. But I like the bad guy, so I'm going to just let him be a little bit more in the shadow, duplicating that, and kind of just giving a bit more of a menacing thing. Just like so. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is, because he's baldy, he's a little baldy, I'm gonna give him a bit of a shine. I'm joking. I love bald guys. I'm joking. But he really does need a bit more shine. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to make him look more bald than he is. But the human head is very reflective, and so you need a bit more of that direct response to the light source wherever it is. And then finally, I'm going to get my spotlight. Where are you, my handy dandy spotlight? There you are. And I'm going to just throw in that spotlight just there. And I'm just gonna delete away at it. Well, first of all, I'm gonna blur it because I don't like those little bands I get. And then I'm just going to kind of give it a better taper. I don't want it to take over. Honestly, this spotlight could go behind him. Oh, well, I can't do that because I don't have layer access anymore. It can go in front, all of that. But I really just want it to feel like it's washed over him. I don't want it to feel like it's taking away from what I have here already. The spotlight is just kind of like a waterfall, just washing over his shoulders. Look at that. Look at how much of a story we told with just the lighting. We didn't change the composition. We did not change the character's gesture. We changed nothing but the lighting. Isn't that a miracle? Isn't that awesome? Then I'm going to just let some of the top of his shoulders, the top of his general person, have more of a light drowning. So just using my dodge tool very, very mercilessly, kind of just letting it sit over everything. And then because now I have 2 layers, I can just delete away at what I don't need. So this has been my story since the beginning. Light tells everything, light controls the scene. I'm never gonna stop raving about that. There's really nothing better than the light. And so if you guys are at a loss and you don't want to change your character, you don't want to change how your character looks, you like the composition, but you want to add more, it's the light. It's the light that you can do that doesn't require you sacrifice anything. So let me recap. There are critique hours where I've fixed composition, gesture, and light, okay? And this time I didn't do any of that. I'm only correcting the light, just so you can see that it really is all about the light at the end of the day. You can keep your composition the way it is. You don't have to change it. But one thing you have to add to your knowledge as a creator is the knowledge of light. Okay, you can't create without light. So, you see that? And then there's that little glow of the book. I might just mess around with that, keep it on like color dodge or something. To be honest with you, you can really blow this book up. So you can really give it a lot of narrative power in the scene. Not that much, but I duplicated the layers and I'm just going to let that bleed. So I'm not going to clean up with 2 layers and delete down. I'm letting that dodge tool really just kind of wreak havoc over the scene. And then where's my book glow layer? There it is. I'll duplicate that. So you can see how now this book's extremely important. The scene is now directed more towards the book. I mean, there's a lot more to look at now than where it was before. So just a little bit of contrast, a little bit of knowledge of lighting, and you have an illustration. You don't just have a drawing with some mild values on it. You have a whole illustration. So how do you learn this stuff, Istebrak? Where did you learn this stuff about light? That's a question I get a lot, especially in private tutoring. How do I get this knowledge in my head? Watch movies. The best of the best work on movies. The best of the best are given the big bucks to pick the best lighting and set the best sets and pick the best costumes and write the best scripts and select the best actors and cast the best actor. The best of the best are working on movies, okay? Of today's modern movements in cinema and storytelling. I'm not talking about classical artists who are dead in the ground. I'm talking about today's trends and how to paint illustrations. It's not always the same. Old paintings are great, but they're not trending. Not that trending is required, but they don't. I'm sorry. What happened? The ad. I tried to sketch on it. So it's off. I'm doing better. Yeah, I don't know. It was ad bad. Oh, I don't know. I don't even forget what I was saying. Oh, okay. We're talking about people who are working on stuff that is applicable to today's style of storytelling. So study movies, pause the friggin' scene and study it. Do a frame-by-frame analysis of it. If it's composition, study the frames that came before it. If it's lighting, pause it and study the light. Studying means diagram that a reference, copy that reference, study it, stare at that reference. It's all about movies. I watched a lot of movies growing up. Movies were where I lived in my head, okay? I had nothing else to do for a while in my 20s and in my teens. I was pretty much stuck at home. So I drew a lot, but also I watched a lot of movies. Movies like Constantine, I'd watch probably like 100 times a year. And I watched movies on repeat. Like I've practically memorized these movies. Lord of the Rings, I watched them all. Lots of the, classic Ridley Scott movies. Just pretty, soundtracks were a whole other thing as well. I was like immersed in soundtracks. Me and my siblings play a soundtrack game. We used to anyway. We'd play a soundtrack. They'd play me the soundtrack game, and they just play a random soundtrack they found online, and I'd be able to tell them where it came from. I watched a lot of movies. This is where I picked up this knowledge. I didn't work at a studio. I didn't apprentice with a lighting expert. I wasn't a photographer. I wasn't any of that, but I know all this knowledge because I studied movies and stared at movies and lived in them. So pick your favorite movie. Pick a movie that represents the style of illustration you want to mimic and study it. It's the same as master studies, but just movie studies. So before, after, just a little bit of lighting, well-placed contrast, not random contrast. And now we have a scene that is so moving. What's happening? What is this book? What's going on? It looks very interesting and very appealing. Okay, yeah. Hey, so I don't know if this is allowed, but is there a set time when Portrait Studio goes on sale again? So Portrait Studio is going to be on sale for Black Friday, maybe the start of November, and then December. All of December, Portrait Studio is like 55% off. So if you want to wait till December, you can do that. But for now, Portrait Studio sale is off. It was on sale for all of the summer. And most of the year, to be honest, but for the summer, it was on sale for a while. I just have been so busy. I have not been campaigning for Portrait Studio lately, so that's why some people are out of the loop, but I will do my best to start campaigning for it again and making sure everyone's up to speed with exactly when the sale will start. But, very enlightening, huh, Kyle? Okay. So, any questions at all before, after. Just a little bit of lighting goes a long way, and you can tell the whole story, not part of the story, not some of the story, and oh, composition will take care of the rest. In scenes like this, the light is telling the entire story. Again, I did not adjust the composition or the gesture, though I could have things I would change with composition and gesture. I would include some kind of wind element, just so the billowing of his robes move around a little bit asymmetrically. And the gesture, I wouldn't change it much because he's a monk, so they're very poised and very appropriate little boys. They don't do any crazy hip movements, so I can't give him any of those asymmetrical hip male standing kind of league splash gesture leaning anime lean type thing. So I would leave him symmetrical since he's a good bald boy. All right, I'll let you guys go. Thank you everyone for watching. If you guys learned something today and you want to give back to my community, please consider joining as a $1 patron. I know you may say, oh, the next guy will do it, but really it's about everybody joining in because it's just $1. But if everybody joins in, if 20 people join in, that's $20 a month that goes towards the community and goes towards me. So please consider doing that. This is my job. This is what I do. I don't have a day job. This is what I do. I sit here and I teach you guys how to draw. So please consider joining me on Patreon for $1 watcher. If you want more educational material than I'm already giving you, if you want more of that good knowledge learning, you can join me on Patreon as an apprentice. I give out homework. I give out my own personal art PSDs, all of that. And if you want your work critiqued, if you saw this person's art, this is not my art. This is another person's art posted on the subreddit. Go to my website, istebrak.com, and click on the subreddit right here. That'll take you to my subreddit, and that's where you can post everything, even furry art. Just make sure it's safe for work, and I will critique it. It might show up in the critique hour. And if you check here at the top, oh, I need to unpin this. If you check here at the top, the current community challenge is the Sphere of Light. So please click on it, read the brief, join us on Discord on my community tab right here to stay connected. And also, if YouTube isn't giving you any notifications, if you join on Discord, I send out notifications for every stream, personal streams and class streams through Discord. I never fail to do that. Next class is Tuesday, the 17th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to try my best to host critique hours from now until December break. I'll see you guys then next week at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you everyone for coming. Bye guys.